Okay, folks. So do you hear me now? Let's see. Let's see if you can hear me now. And I will tell you what happened here. So let me make myself a bit smaller here so you can see. Let me actually, yeah, let me bring this, make it smaller, and let me bring this down. So do you hear me now? Okay, you hear? Oh my goodness! Look, so I had the OBS thingy, which does the streaming. This application over here, and I click Start Streaming, thinking that it will start streaming, and then I come to YouTube here to see if the stream health is okay, and it is telling me stream is healthy. You know, at 2 o'clock here, and I was like, okay, that's great. So let me start talking, and I talk the whole time. And then I noticed that up here, if you see my mouse, which I'm not sure if you see, but up here there is a button and it was saying go live. And I didn't notice, I didn't pay attention to that because I was like, I clicked on start streaming. What's the point? Anyway, you have to click on that damn button and well, here we are. It didn't work. So anyway, I am here now. So now you can hear me, you can see me. Where is my OBS? It's here. Let me make my view here larger. So yeah, I'm sorry about this, folks. I'm really sorry. So I was talking this whole time, and well, what can we do? Nothing happened. Let's go back. Let's go back to. So hello to everybody. I'm really sorry for this. I was here since the beginning. I was on time, but yeah. What can we do? Of course, there is a joke here about Greek time, and so I have to say it. Of course, I am Greek, so we have to use sarcasm sometimes to make fun of things. So if you ever go to Greece, you will meet a lot of Greek people. Whether you will meet them on time is a different discussion. In Greece, we generally are really lax with time. Like when you are with friends, of course, not in a business capacity, but with friends, we are like, hey, let's go have a drink. And everybody's like, okay, let's go at 9 p.m. And you're like, yeah, sure. Nobody is there at 9 p.m. People will start joining at 9:30, quarter to 10, that sort of thing. So Greek time, here I am. Uh, let's get to the chat and see how that goes. Maybe I can make it a bit larger as well so that it's easier for everybody to see it. What is that pop-up over there? Okay, so let's see, folks. Okay, so I will comment on everything again. So what can we do? Spiros had a question here, which is Ya Prot, Spiros says. So Spiros is a Greek name. It's the shortened version of Spiridon, and that's the name of a saint. Emacs question. I proposed a change on Emacs devel and prepared a patch. Eventually, the conversation stopped with no clear answer. Should I submit it as a patch on the bug tracker or not? For me, the answer is give it another try. Go to the Emacs Devel thread and post a comment and ask whether people have anything to say. Maybe you need to work on the patch, maybe not, and ask them explicitly, hey, maybe I didn't send it to the right place, maybe I should send it to the bug tracker. I am saying this since you already started the thread. However, generally speaking, when you are sending a patch to Emacs, you want to send it to the bug tracker. And you want to send it there because some of the maintainers that check the bug tracker do it, from what I understand, via the debbugs package for Emacs. And this package gives them ranking of the open bugs and they can track things. And basically, it makes it easier for them to make sense of what is happening. And so if you send something to the bug tracker, they will see it there. Whereas I don't think debbugs has an interface for the Emacs development mailing list. Maybe it does, but I'm not aware of that. If it does, of course, then what I just said is pointless. But anyway, as a matter of courtesy, you want to ask them, hey, is everything okay? Let me know, and take it from there. Me, when I send the patches to Emacs, if they are about core Emacs, I will send them to the Emacs bug tracker. If they are specifically about GNU ELPA, I will send them to the Emacs development mailing list. And the reason for that is because I am not sure if GNU ELPA is supposed to be discussed or tracked from the Emacs bug tracker. But maybe if I were to send it there, it would be fine as well. Of course, I have write access to Emacs, but this doesn't matter. Whenever you want to make a change, it's good to do it via a patch. It's again a matter of courtesy and of keeping the maintainers in the loop. Let's see, Jeff asks, and as I said, I was talking about this before going live. So Jeff asks, hey Prot, what do you think about knowledge management systems? I've experimented with org Roam, but never got the hang of it. And it feels like knowledge systems like Zettelkasten are overhyped. Wonder what you think about such things and what your general approach to learning is. First, let's start with knowledge management systems, and then I will tell you about my approach to learning. I think they are overrated. Not because they are not good, but because they make a false promise. The promise that one size fits all. They tell you, oh, this is the second brain. This is the one thing that you are missing, which will boost your productivity, make you a 10x, whatever it is you are, and thus improve you. And I think this is disingenuous because it assumes that all people think the same way. All people conceptualize the world the same way. All people's brains act the same way, and so on. Whereas we know that people are diverse. We know that one size does not fit all. And even if everybody could have this fabled second brain, which we can discuss, even if everybody could have that, it will not be by using the exact same method. People will have to figure out what works for them and what doesn't work for them. This is the idea. Zettelkasten is perfectly fine in a vacuum. Whether it is fine for you, that's for you to decide. I suggest you give it a try and see if it makes sense. If it doesn't make sense, then it may be the fault of Zettelkasten. It may also be the fault, which is not really fault, but it may also be the fact that your brain doesn't think in Zettelkasten terms. And for me, this is, I had a personal experience about this, not specific to Zettelkasten and friends, but to how we do tasks. And of course, you know the getting things done methodology. And there was a point in my life where I got this notion that I wasn't as productive as I should be, which was, of course, a misbegotten notion. It was wrong. But I, anyway, got this idea. And so I looked into getting things done, and I was like, okay, great, I will implement this method now. And instead of actually becoming more productive, I got into this mini game or this meta game, whatever you want to call it, where instead of actually doing stuff, I was thinking of, did I capture all my tasks? Did I enumerate everything? Was I sufficiently completionist in this task or not? And of course, this was a distraction. So instead of actually doing the things that I could keep in memory, I was like, no, I shouldn't keep anything in memory. Why not? I shouldn't keep anything in memory, was my thought. I should write everything down. And then I was in this process of writing everything down to the last detail where it was no longer useful. Because when I would be presented with my task list, instead of having a small list, like 5 things to do, I had this mountain of tasks. And I was like, okay, who is actually going to do this? Because I'm out. I'm not going to do all that. Basically, it was disempowering me. And it's not because getting things done is wrong, it's because I couldn't think in GTD terms. I couldn't think in those terms. And so basically, I had to figure something myself, which brings us to the point of learning and more generally to the method we should have when it comes to discovering ourselves and discovering the apps or the tools or the approaches that work for us, that we want to implement, we want to employ. And for me, this always is start small. Start with something really simple, something really basic. It won't be fancy. It won't win you any accolades. You won't get any nerd cred out of it, but it will be something that you understand from beginning to end. And by understanding it and working with it, you will be insightful of the pieces that make the system you are creating. So by piecing together this system, you have now this intimate knowledge of what the system is. Whereas if I give you some complex app or some elaborate method and tell you take it as it is, for you, this is inscrutable. This is a box and you don't know what is in that box. And because you don't know, you cannot figure it out from the complexity to go to the simple. It's really difficult. Because you cannot figure it out, you are disempowered. And because you are disempowered, eventually you reach a point where you're like, you know what? This app slash method doesn't work. Therefore, I need to go to this other shiny or trendy app slash method and try again. And what happens is that you traded one inscrutable box for another inscrutable box. And if you take the big picture view, what you are doing to yourself is you are undermining your ability to actually do what you want. You are jeopardizing your efforts and you don't feel good about yourself. You are like, I'm being wasteful, this doesn't work. And then you try to pathologize yourself and be like, oh, it's because I have this condition where I cannot be productive or whatever. Like you try to rationalize it that way. And instead of looking at it like, well, let me go down to the simple. Let me try the simple. And through trial and error, I will figure out what works and what doesn't work for me in particular. It doesn't matter what works and what doesn't work for the rest of the world, for me in particular. This is the idea. Now, about learning, because you mentioned org Rome and Zettelkasten and all this trend of note taking and writing everything down and take it out of your brain and put it in this second brain or whatnot. Me personally, I disagree. And you may know, of course, that in Emacs, I am the developer of a package called Denote. And part of Denote is to write notes, even though it's not just that. But I won't talk about Denote now. I am not in favor of just taking notes about everything and not being mindful of what you are doing. And let me give you an example. I through introspection and self-reflection, I realized what I was doing wrong. I would be reading a book, and while reading the book for the first time, I was introduced to something new. While reading the book, I would be highlighting stuff and I will be taking notes on it. And I will be like, ah, great, this is a very good point. Let me keep a note about it and let me write why it's so good. And if it's a point I disagree with, well, let me be combative, let me be argumentative, and let me destroy the argument or whatever, right? So I had this mindset, and this is the wrong mindset for the simple reason that I still don't have a good idea of what the book is about. And I am rushing to conclusions. I am bringing my prejudices into the mix. Of course, Everybody has prejudices, but we want to try to limit them. And the best way to do that, I think, is to give the new material, the book in this case, give it an honest chance. Read it and think about it. Read the first chapter, think about it, and try to put the arguments in your own words. Like, can I actually tell a friend about what I just read? If I can do that, then I have sort of understood it. If I cannot do that, then I should read it again. I wasn't paying attention. So reach a point where you can tell your friend about this chapter and this book in general. But when I say tell your friend, I don't mean to just mention, oh, there is this book. I mean to tell them what the point of the book is, okay? If you can do that, then you now are ready to actually write a note. A note is not the same as a bookmark. It's not the same as a reminder, such as, oh, I stopped reading at page 50, therefore let me take a quick note of that so that I can resume from page 50. It's not that. A note is about crystallizing your knowledge. So it is about writing down what you can already say. It's about writing down what you would have told your friend with regard to the knowledge that you are acquiring. When you are writing down thoughts in this manner that I am now discussing, you want to do it in a way that assumes you as a stranger, future you as a stranger. Because when you are writing, in the moment of writing, you have all this context in mind. So you are like, oh, I know what I am doing. I know what I am thinking. I don't need to write down everything. Let me just write the five key points, the bullet points, and that's enough. It's not enough. Because 6 months from now, 6 years from now, you will revisit that note and you will read it and you will have forgotten the context and you will be like, this makes no sense. It's useless. So, in present time, you are doing your future self a disservice if you are not taking care of what you write, if you are not thinking of the wellness of this person, or if you are not thinking of this person's need to understand what you are saying. So try to be compassionate in that regard. Try to think of what is good for my future self and your future self as a stranger in this regard. Of course, the same applies if you are writing for an audience, right? That's clear. But even if it's a private note, I think this is the right approach. So let's continue here. These kind folks, Peter and Susan, told me that I wasn't actually live earlier, even though I was talking. I was already commenting on these, and then I saw these. So there is enough electricity, thankfully, and thank you for commenting on that, because otherwise I would have missed it and I would be talking. Oh, 1 second, we have lots of comments here, folks. Let's see where we are. So hello everybody. Hello Suzanne, Jeff, Jacqueline, FR, Patrick, no atomics. But want to say hi. So hello to you as well. Zerka, Pill. Any good package for grammar check in Emacs? There is a program outside of Emacs called ProseLint. ProseLint, one word. And there is a backend for ProseLint called FlyMake ProseLint. FlyMake is a built-in linter for Emacs. It's basically a program that shows you you have warnings, you have errors, take care of this, look into that, this is the line, that sort of thing. So that's basically what a linter does. And the FlyMake ProseLint will take ProseLint and integrate it into Emacs. So when you are writing prose, you can do MX FlyMake mode with the setup for ProseLint that you will find in the documentation of that package. And then you set that up. I tried that for a while, but eventually I discarded it, not because the package or the program are not good, but because they were too pedantic. And I would get issues such as, oh, this is past tense. You should never use past tense because such and such. It's not clear. And I'm like, no, stop. Past tense exists in English, and you have to take care to use it in a way that is clear. It's not because past tense is there. That doesn't make it wrong per se. It's not false in and of itself. So there is that, and there will be other pedantic points, and I was like, yeah, you know what, I don't need to see this anymore. I read enough about it, and okay, goodbye. So me, I stopped using it, but the package is really good though. So you can try that, and there are others, but I haven't looked into them. So Guowei says hi, hello to you too. Steven says, discovered your video on why you went from Tmax plus Vim to Emacs. I'm at a similar point and I'm trying to learn Emacs. What advice would you give to someone with all your experience since that video? It's basically what I was saying earlier about piecing together a system. I think it's the same idea here. When you have a setup that works, Vim, Tmax, etc., it is tempting to switch to something else and expect to have everything exactly the same. So you will be like, okay, why isn't Emacs splitting Windows the same way as Tmax does its panes, right? Pane. Why can't I have that? So you will search online. First thing, okay, let's replicate Tmax inside of Emacs. And then you will be like, okay, I need to now replicate Vim inside of Emacs. Okay. And then you will be like, oh, I really need to also replicate this other thing I was doing inside of Emacs. And by having this attitude, what happens is that you are now in the mode of basically copy pasting without actually putting any thought into what this code actually does. And more importantly, without having first given a fair chance to the out of the box Emacs experience. In my opinion, Emacs out of the box is not good. It's really hard. Many choices, many design decisions, I don't agree with. It is what it is, though, of course. So I won't complain. Emacs is fantastic because we can modify it, but out of the box, I think it's not good. It doesn't give a good first impression. However, if you start small, what I was saying earlier, if you start small and piece by piece, you address every pain point that you have. And in the process, you are also reading through the manual, one step at a time, one section at a time. I think you are improving the chances you have for success. You are setting yourself up for success for the same reason that I said earlier. You understand how your system is pieced together. And because you understand how your system is pieced together, you know which questions to formulate when something doesn't work. Whereas imagine you are in this mode of, okay, let's replicate Tmax, let's replicate Vim, let's replicate everything else inside of Emacs. Now you have like 2,000 lines of Emacs Lisp code in your configuration, and something breaks, and you're like, oops, what do I do now? And you go and search online. Of course, nobody has the exact same setup as you. Therefore, you don't get sufficiently good answers. Now you are frustrated. And long story short, you are like, screw Emacs, this terrible piece of software. Let me go back to what I was using. And of course, what you were using is fine, but if you want to make this a success and to not be a gauntlet that is simply painful, you want to start small and take it from there. At least in my experience, this is what worked. I think if I had gone for the advanced setup that is complex and complicated, I think I would have quit and I would be back to my older setup. Just to say though, why would you even want to switch from Tmax, Vim, and Friends to Emacs? And basically the idea is because of Emacs Lisp. At least for me, this was basically the reason. Because Emacs provides you this option, this power, if you will, to modify everything uniformly. So by learning how to modify the editor, let's say, you have also learned Emacs Lisp, which is the same Emacs Lisp you will use to modify the window manager, okay, the multiplexer. And because you know that, you also have the skills to modify the email client and to modify the RSS feed reader and so on and so forth. By learning Emacs, by investing in Emacs Lisp, you are making an investment that will keep paying dividends. And I think that's really important, and that's basically the key. Of course, you can use Emacs just as a user without ever writing any custom code. But if you can write some custom code and you take the time to learn a little bit of it, I think that basically is an upgrade. You will have a really good time with it. At least this has been my experience. I never looked back. I switched in the summer of 2019, and here we are, almost the summer of 2025, right? So yeah, let's see how that will go for the next years. But I'm pretty sure that I will keep using Emacs for the foreseeable future. So, Mike Dahlberg says, could you comment on the political situation in the United States? Do you think some of the far-right movements in Europe are a result of the political situation in the US or vice versa? Good that you mentioned Europe because I think it helps with my approach in general, with understanding my approach in general, which is a bigger picture historical understanding as well. I think you cannot understand what is happening now in the United States and in the European Union or in Europe in general without understanding more generally the dynamic of financial meltdown. In the 2008 plus financial crisis that the world experienced, we had fundamentally the collapse of an established paradigm for doing business, but also for organizing society. And with this collapse, we have now, from a crisis that is economic, a crisis that is financial, we have a crisis of values, a crisis of what it means to be a citizen, a crisis of what is the role of the government, what is the role of a central bank, what is the role of the intermediaries, the private banks. And the intermediaries is what is known as the transmission mechanism. When the central bank generates money, prints money, to put it simply. When it generates money, when it does its monetary policy, it has to go through the private banks to eventually reach the real economy. So all these combined with the economic hardship that people would experience. People would be struggling to make ends meet. People would be in persistent unemployment. In the meantime, prices wouldn't actually drop. We didn't experience, together with the economic downturn, we didn't experience a commensurate disinflation. What we experienced is basically stagnation in many areas. And we see nowadays, for example, actually upward pressures in accommodation, and people cannot find a place to rent. It's actually why I am at this very hut over here. It was impossible for me given my financial situation. The reason I am saying this is because once you understand this kind of toxic cocktail of economic hardship, frustration, um, not trusting the government, the institutions. Like, why would I trust a government, for example, that went to great lengths to implement economic austerity for me and the working class people and the small and medium sized businesses while bailing out mega banks, while propping up all those zombie companies, all those institutions that were actually insolvent and were still being propped up? Why? Why should I ever trust that kind of government, that kind of institutional order? And so, with this in mind, we have this cocktail frustration, hardship, lack of trust in institutions. These institutions were eroded by the actions of those in power. And those in power were, by and large, the centrists or the liberals in the European sense of the word. So classical liberals or the neoliberals. Okay, so basically the centrists. And in America, they have this language where they say liberals and they say also left. And this isn't really what left actually is. Liberals and left are two different things. So the liberals, like the Bill Clinton kind of person, the Barack Obama kind of person, these are not leftists, okay? These are liberals. So the liberal consensus that existed for decades basically undermined its own credibility through its policies. Policies that were proven to be wanting, policies that were redistribution of wealth towards the wealthy. It was from the bottom to the top. And so, against this historical backdrop, against this backdrop of a crisis of values, you have the appeal of the macho man, the appeal of the strong man who will clear the house from corruption, who will get rid of waste, who will be the alpha male, and all that language you are well aware of, which we see in full sight in America right now, but we also see in Europe. We have been seeing it in Europe already. This is not a new phenomenon like we saw it in Greece in the previous decade. We see it in France. Le Pen is always one step away from the presidency. We see it now in Germany. So, of course, we see it. Nigel Farage in the United Kingdom has been then forever. He is not a new phenomenon, and so on, so forth. The point is that because institutions have been severely damaged, it is now plausible to pay attention to these strong men and to say, okay, you know what? Those not so strong men, let's call them, which I think I don't mean it in a derogatory word, in a derogatory sense, but in the sense that they didn't present themselves as macho so much. Those more mild, more moderate, more centrist kind of politicians, well, they messed things up. So maybe this guy, this strong man, maybe he knows what he is doing. Let's trust him. And so I think this is the appeal of Trump. And this is the appeal of what Elon Musk is doing with the Doge or Doggy or Dodgy, however you call that institution or group, whatever it is. There is appeal to that because there is like, well, we did have corruption. Well, things didn't actually go well. Bankers got all the money. We didn't get, we got austerity. They got bonuses. So, of course, even though I don't disagree with the substantive points of far right movements, I can understand why they are gaining momentum. And this is a criticism because me, I am a leftist. Okay, this is a criticism towards people on the left, but also towards liberals, which is you cannot be in denial. You have to understand that not everybody out there is a bloody racist. Not everybody out there is a bloody misanthrope. Not everybody out there is a bloody misogynist or whatever. What was Hillary Clinton, the deplorables? Not everybody is deplorable. Come on, half your population is deplorable. Half of Europe is deplorable. We have to have a more nuanced understanding of what is happening. Of course, there will be those who are clearly racist, who are clearly misogynistic, clearly phobic towards diversity in general. But those are preying on the well-founded fears, concerns of the average person, the average working class person, the average entrepreneur, small and medium-sized businesses. They are preying on those people. And they are successful because every big lie always rests on a kernel of truth. There is no such thing as a complete falsehood that is persuasive. There is always a kernel of truth. So when Musk, for example, says, I will clean up the waste, is because there is a kernel of truth to that. There is waste. When they talk about there having been censorship from previous regimes, of course there was. We all remember when Twitter would deplatform people willy-nilly. Now they went to the other extreme. Of course, I'm not justifying. I'm trying to understand. And by understanding, we can fix the problem. If we demonize people, if we say, oh no, these are deplorables, oh, these are bloody racists, we are not going to win anyone. Like, if they are actually all despicable people, then do you want to make an alliance with them to fix your society? Your society is doomed. If you truly believe that everybody around you is evil, well, you are already doomed. But I think not everybody is evil. I think it's a small minority, which, however, because of the situation, has a lot of power. So we have to be sober. We shouldn't go to extremes. We shouldn't demonize anybody, but we should also not panic because we see this in Trump, especially. Trump does reality TV. Okay, we saw it clearly in the meeting that Donald Trump and J.D. Vance and the others had with Zelensky, the president of Ukraine. It was a show. There is another word you use which has show followed by something else, but you get what I'm saying. It was all a show. It was all a spectacle. It was not substantive. This is not exactly what politics is about. And we see Trump flip-flopping when it comes to tariff. He keeps saying things. So let's be patient. Let's not take everything he says at face value. Part of that is a show, and part of it is not policy. Let's wait to see policies and not demonize anybody in the process and act on the assumption, act with the belief that there is good in people, that not everybody is a lost cause. Some of them are, maybe some are, but not everybody. Okay? So this is the idea. And of course, US, Europe, I'm giving you the big picture, and I think it's the same everywhere. No atomics. Yes, one size doesn't fit all. I stopped using org mode after learning that I have ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. I kept losing myself in the details. No, now I am using a physical journal with the bullet journal method. Fantastic. And this is exactly my point. Like, see what works for you. Like, you mentioned here ADHD. Exactly. Like, if I design a system for somebody who is not ADHD and I give it to a person who has ADHD, then of course I am doing that person a disservice. I am not respecting that person. Or maybe respecting is the wrong word because it's not like I am malevolent, but I am not considering the alternatives. I am not considering that people are different, that reality is about diversity. Of course, I may want to shoehorn everybody into a certain binary or even one, but in reality, things are more complex. So there is that. Yeah, getting things done promotes a specific mindset. For me, burnout waiting to happen. It's that. One way I think of this, which is really simplistic, and I am simplifying on purpose now. I don't mean to say that this is how the reality is, but think of two types of people. One is the kind of person who is really good with numbers, who is really good with details, who is basically always tidy and that kind of thing. Let's think of the accountant. Okay, so the accountant is really strong when it comes to numbers and when it comes to that kind of detail. Think now of another person who is the virtuoso, the artist. This is the person who has the creativity to imagine worlds that nobody else can even fathom. Okay, but the artist, if you put the artist in the role of the accountant, feels constrained and is like, I cannot do anything here, I need to express myself. And of course, if you take the accountant and put them in the role of the virtuoso, we'll be like, oh my goodness, this is open-ended, I cannot deal with this, right? So nobody's right, nobody's wrong. We just have to acknowledge that they are different, and so they have to have something that works for them. Fish on land and all that. So Bernie Larp says, how do we use Emacs Lisp to solve the Jewish question? I'm not sure what you mean by that, so I don't have an answer, but yeah, hopefully it's something that is not harmful. But yeah, maybe you want to elaborate, but other than that, I cannot assume. Oh, let's see, let's see. Where are we, folks? So Mjolnir's Revenge says, hi, Prot. What are your thoughts on the NBA and Yao Ming in particular? I must say that I know next to nothing about the NBA, so I have no idea who Yao Ming is, so I'm sorry. Hopefully, it's not me being so ignorant that I don't know basically the best player ever, right? So hopefully it's not that bad, but yeah, I am bad for sure. I can tell you about football if you want, and I'm happy to comment on that. For my Americans here, football is that sport that you actually kick the ball. There is another sport called hug ball where you hug the ball and you run with it. So there is that. I'm kidding, of course. So let's see. Roman says, hi, Prot. It's great to have the opportunity to talk to you. Do you use Dired alone or with other packages like Dirvish or something else, or something like this? I use Dired alone. I have my configuration online actually on my website. If you go protesilaos.com, it's my website. You will see there is a section there about Emacs. So protesilaos.com/Emacs / Emacs. Maybe I can write it here. Let me bring up Emacs here. I was doing something else here, folks. Let's ignore that. Let me see. Do you see here? Let's see. Let me see what you are seeing so I can write it. 1 second, please. Let me make this a bit smaller. And you see here. So it's, can I actually do this? Fantastic. So it's Emacs and then .emacs. So if you go there, you will see what I have. And basically, the short answer is that I use Dired mostly on its own, I would say, but there are some extensions, so I benefit from those as well. Dirvish is a really good package, but I use Dired on its own because it's easier for me to tweak if I need something and know that it will work in the future. However, I haven't actually had the need for that, so maybe I am just wrong. Maybe I should just use Dirvish and call it a day, because Dirvish, of course, is a really good package. Uh, Patrick asks, what is your view on internet piracy? Are there cases in which it can be justified, e.g., scientific articles? Is there a difference between pirating music and listening to it on YouTube with ad block? About the second part, I actually don't know. Um, so that would be a legal question. So I don't know what the answer to that would be. My gut feeling is that it's a gray area. Like, I wouldn't be sure that it is piracy per se in the legal sense, but maybe you are violating some kind of rule that you have agreed to, maybe. But I don't know. Scientific articles, again, legally, of course, I understand how it works, but I don't agree with the system we have nowadays. The system we have nowadays is a system where all of the world's high level knowledge, science, is siloed behind paywalls, is siloed in corporate silos. And for me, that makes no sense. Like, why do we have scientists do all that work and give it in the form of an article to a journal, and then that journal locks access to who gets that article. Why? More so when those scientists benefit from public funding. They get funds from the state, basically. So for me, that makes no sense whatsoever. Of course, advocating for for piracy, um, I don't know. I don't know what the implications of that would be because, of course, you know the case of what was the name of that activist, Aaron Swartz. So you know the case of Aaron Swartz, who was, if I remember correctly, was pirating scientific articles and was eventually sentenced to 1 zillion years in prison, and he committed suicide. So of course, the state will bring forth its full panoply when it comes to matters like this because it wants to protect the powers that be. Whether I agree with this system, of course not. For me, all knowledge should be free. There is no such thing as proprietary knowledge. I don't agree with that at all, for sure. And if there is some method of resistance, then yes, why not? Felipe says, hi, Prot. Hello to you, to Felipe. Evlogi says, hey, Prot. We haven't seen a video from you in over a month. Just wanted to check in. Is everything okay? How have you been during the break? Hope all is well. And there is an emoji there, which I guess it's this. I've never done this, by the way. So am I doing it correctly, folks? So yeah. Or maybe they do it like this with all the fingers. Yeah, I don't know. I see footballers do that, not the hug ballers. Okay, so indeed, and the reason for my absence or my hiatus or whatever the word is that it was a really harsh winter here. Not in absolute terms. It was cold, of course, but not in absolute terms, but relative to what I can take here, because the hut here is still a fair weather construction. I still need to improve the heat insulation. I still need to have the pipes insulated. I still need to do a lot of things. And because I don't have all that, it's really difficult. Furthermore, and this is something I had to deal with a lot these past weeks, batteries, I learned the hard way, batteries do not cope well with extreme cold. I have a system with solar panels, which produces electricity, and these are connected to batteries. These batteries are housed together with the inverter and all the rest. They are housed in a small cabin that I made out of doors. I have done a video in the past about this. But the point is that this cabin isn't sufficiently insulated. It needs to be warmer, basically, during the winter. And in practical terms, what this means is that I didn't have enough electricity during the day, combined with the fact that it was cloudy, rainy, snowy. So I would have realistically 2 or 3 hours a day of electricity. Sometimes it would be 5 if it was a little bit sunny. So within those hours, I had to reply to emails. I had to do some work on Emacs. I had to write what I am writing. So basically, I didn't have, and of course, do some coaching work. And so I didn't have the chance to record videos and to be like, you know what, I can charge my phone now in order to record the video. So basically, I sacrificed my phone and I was like, okay, no problem. I will just wait and I will do it later. And a general point about my videos in general, because of course I am now streaming on YouTube, right? But I don't think of myself as a YouTuber or a content creator, as they say, in the sense that, oh, I have an obligation to publish content for my target audience. I don't think of myself in that way. I publish when I feel I have something to say. And if I don't have something to say, then I prefer to remain silent. This is the idea. And this is also why I never got into this trend, which I don't know if it's still a thing, of doing the short videos. What was it, like the shorts, 1 minute long? I was like, what's the point? I don't see any value that I can bring to the table for that. And also, I am suspicious that you can actually do anything useful with that. Of course, you can do funny videos and stuff, but anything of the sort that I do. So I was like, okay, so I don't have anything to say, therefore I won't. And it's as simple as that. But I was always good. I am always going from strength to strength. I'm always healthy. I'm always energetic, always curious, always interested to learn new things and still do it while being content with the stability I have in my life. The stability of the sort of a life that is largely uneventful. Uneventful in the formal sense, like there are not things are not happening here. There are no neighbors here. There are no festivals. There are no activities of this sort. So it's more quiet. And for me, this is fine. So there is that. I hope you are doing well too. Joao says, good morning, Prot. Good morning to you as well. And Joao gets the response that it's 2 p.m. over there. Indeed, local time right now, it's 40 past 3 already. And if you joined in later in the stream, basically I had this issue where the stream didn't start for 45 minutes because of a silly mistake with YouTube. If you go back to the video, which is recorded by the way, you can see what the problem is. I talked about it there. So Joao says it's 10 a.m. in Brazil, so that's good. That's very nice. I would like to visit Brazil someday. It's a beautiful country. I used to work with Portuguese people. Fantastic. Some of my favorite people, the ones I worked with. And they were telling me about Brazil. And so, yeah, I would like to visit sometime. But whether that will happen, I have no idea. And if that happens, it won't be soon, I guess. So, let's see. Do you use Emacs native keys or evil? It's native keys. Even though I switched from Vim to Emacs, I gave Emacs a fair chance. And this connects to a point I was making earlier about things I learned in the transition from Vim to Emacs, which is I gave Emacs a fair chance, and I didn't come in with the mindset of being either combative or prejudiced. I was like, let me try and see what the fuss is about. And I tried for a month, and after a month, I was like, you know what, this is not actually that bad. So eventually I stuck with that. And then, of course, the whole point of Emacs is to make changes that make sense to you. And this is what I have been doing ever since. So Roman asks, what do you think about Diogenes as philosopher and what we know about him? Um, I admire Diogenes. We are talking about Diogenes the Cynic, also Diogenes of Sinope. Sinope is a place in modern day Turkey, and Diogenes is known as Diogenes the Cynic because of his philosophy, which is likened to that of dogs. Kinas in ancient Greece is the word for dog. And kynikos is somebody who is dog-like in their disposition, in their outlook, in their views. And dog-like is not actually derogatory, if you ask me. If you have ever lived with dogs, which I do, I have two dogs. By the way, let me see if I can show the dogs. Let me also make myself a bit smaller here so that you see the dogs. And I will return to the Oyenis, no worries. So here are my two dogs, if you can see them. So there is that, folks. Let me restore the layout here. So if you have ever lived with dogs and if you have ever paid attention to their behavior, you will appreciate how simple they can be. Of course, they are advanced thinkers. They have a sophisticated language, which is verbal and non-verbal. They have all these. I don't mean to belittle dogs, but what I am saying is that you see how dogs and other animals as well live in the moment. They are content with the little things. They are content with a frugal life. Whereas we people, we tend to live in the past or in the future, and we tend to not have enough of anything. We are insatiable. We want more adventure, more money, more fame, more glory, more women or men or whatever, okay? We want more of everything. We can never have enough. We can never be satisfied with the few. We do not have the subtlety, the nuance to recognize the universals in the most basic things, in the little things. And because we don't have that attitude, we suffer, I think. We suffer because we live in the present, but we think of something that is fundamentally elusive, something that we cannot have in the present. The past cannot be brought to the present. The future cannot be brought to the present. And we also suffer when we don't sate ourselves with the few. Because if you are of the mindset of, I need more, well, the cosmos is infinite. You will never sate yourself, ever. Imagine how life would be if you were always hungry, like really painful, right? And you would eat and it wouldn't do anything to your pain. Imagine how that would be. And I think this is kind of what happens mentally when we don't draw a line and say, you know what, actually, I don't need to be a maximalist. Actually, it is okay to live with the few. And this is what we can draw as inspiration by observing dogs. Of course, not just dogs, but in the example of the Diogenes. So Diogenes, as a philosopher, I think in this regard is giving us humility. Humility, which also has an intellectual aspect to it, namely that of plain spokenness. Diogenes was big on a concept we have in Greek called parisia. And there is an English word as well, which is the same, parisia. And maybe I can bring up Emacs to write it really quickly. So it's parisia, like this. I don't know if you can see it there. Yeah, you can see it. Okay. So parisia. So parisia means to have presence, to show yourself, and to speak your mind in earnest. So right now, me being here, saying everything I say, I have parisia. I am not trying to hide. I am here and I speak my mind in earnest and I assume responsibility for everything I am saying. If I am speaking nonsense, well, you will call me a fraud. If I am saying something right, well, you will acknowledge that I am saying something right. If something is incomplete, you will hopefully correct me. The point is that I will take it with honesty. I will take it in earnest. I won't try to argue and to gaslight you and to confuse you. And also, on this point, I won't try to use professorial language, academic discourse, jargon, words that are taken out of context, are metaphysicized, and are turned into something completely different. And now speak to you in a manner that you cannot understand. In other words, I don't want to be a trickster. I don't want to use all these rhetorical devices to sway you. I want to have parisia, which is to speak my mind honestly, but I also want to have the honesty of parisia towards you. The honesty to tell you what I think in a way that hopefully you can understand. And if you don't understand, I will try again. It's not your fault, it's my fault. My fault for failing to make it clear. And I think Diogenes brings this humility to the world. Humility to a world where philosophers could at times think too cavalierly and think too highly of themselves. And we see this, of course, throughout history. Open any philosophy textbook nowadays, or go read some philosophy book and see for yourself. Unless it's something that is meant for beginners, you basically have to assume that you don't understand any of the common words you are reading. And for me, that is disappointing. For me, that is a turn in the wrong way. It is a turn for the worse. I want philosophy to be something that everybody has access to, no matter of their status. So Diogenes was homeless, no matter of their status in society, no matter of their wealth or lack thereof, and no matter of their education. Of course, you have to have some basic intelligence to be able to abstract away from the particularities and see the bigger picture. Of course, yes. What can we do? But other than that, I won't be setting more obstacles. This to me is the spirit of Diogenes. This to me is basically what Diogenes is about. Of course, there are many anecdotes about Diogenes, and maybe those were written by his detractors, basically those pretentious people, those snobs. And of course, there are anecdotes like he would be masturbating in public, defecating in the city square, or whatever, right? Maybe he did that, and I don't think you need to do that. But maybe he didn't do that, and people were just using that to basically make him look like a person that doesn't respect anything, and thus to dismiss his philosophical insights, which I think should not be dismissed in this regard. So there is that. I think Diogenes is really important. Roman continues. What's your distro, desktop, terminal emulator, and your Linux setup in general? So right now it is Debian. This is XFCE, and it's Debian 12, I believe, bookworm. So yeah, Debian is stable. Debian works. Terminal emulator is XFCE terminal, but mostly I do stuff inside of Emacs. So I use Emacs and I use web browsers, and basically that's it. Of course, there is, for example, the screen recording software here, but you get the idea. Most of what I do is inside of Emacs. So, MilNSDS, sorry, I cannot pronounce this. Ethiopia. I want to get into Lisp programming and the Lisp way of problem solving, What are some advices you have? I have done a fair bit of programming with Python before. There are books, of course, you can read and learn. If you are an Emacs user, there is a book that is shipped with Emacs called Introduction to Programming with Emacs Lisp. I believe, I'm not sure. But check. If you search for Introduction to Emacs Lisp Programming, and you will find it. It's a book by, I believe, Bob Chassell, maybe. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. But check that out, and I think that is helpful. Given that you already have knowledge of programming, it shouldn't be too difficult to get into Lisp. Of course, there are lots of varieties of Lisp, so it also depends on what you want to do. But for example, if you want to extend Emacs, then just read what I told you and then play around with Emacs Lisp. in your configuration, and I think everything will go well. You will figure it out over time. So there is that. So Bad Labs says, well, the kernel of truth is actually the GNU slash kernel of truth. So interjecting over there, yeah, of course. So let's see. Mjolnir's Revenge. I don't know if the average person's fear are well founded, but I think you mean sincere beliefs. If they were well founded, I would likely agree more with them. Yeah, fair enough, fair enough. Maybe they are not well founded, but they are not completely deranged. This is another way of thinking of it. They may be justified, let's say 20% and 80% they are wrong, but still there is something there. Basically, this is my point. Like, let's not shy away from what is happening. Let's try to understand better what is happening and make sense of that. Because if we are of the view that nothing that they say is ever correct, I think we basically don't understand what is happening. And if you don't understand that, well founded may be the wrong way, but there is something there, then it's a losing strategy. I think you are always going to be on the back foot. You will always be responding to the initiatives of your political opponents because you don't understand them. You don't understand why they are successful. You don't understand why they have appeal. Of course, you may say they have appeal because everybody is an idiot. But all that does is inflate your ego and just rationalize your ignorance. Not everybody is an idiot. Not everybody is bad. On the same wavelength I was commenting earlier. Maybe again, I agree. I agree that maybe we have to be a bit more careful with the words we use. But I think the point I was making is what matters here, the spirit of what I am saying. So Yanis says, just joined, so intense. So yeah, hopefully I can keep this going. So let's see. Anshul says, hi Prot, I've been a long time subscriber, but I was not an Emacs user. I found you through your philosophy walks in the woods videos. But I recently started using Emacs, Doom Emacs, and was surprised to see that you are so prominent in this space, and I've been using F Lite. So yes, I am doing a lot in Emacs. Of course, I have the videos on Emacs. I also have lots of packages that I maintain and I develop in Emacs. So there is that. And generally, I am really happy to be a member of the Emacs community. It's a wonderful community, I think. I learn a lot, and the people here are respectful and they are really nice in my experience. Of course, there may be cases where somebody is not nice, but I think overall, I think they are really nice. I haven't ever seen a case where people were toxic, the way I have seen in other places. So there is that. F Light, of course, is one of my themes from the F themes collection. Let's see. Oh, what happened here? It moved too fast. Where are we? Where are we, folks? Oh my goodness, where, where did it go? Okay, here we are. We must understand at first what class consciousness is before anything. Class consciousness, I think, helps, but I think it's not the be all and all because I think it's also a way to abstract people from the particularities of their experience. And what I mean by this, maybe this doesn't apply to every country. For example, in America, it may be different than it is, for example, in the mountains of Cyprus, okay? But what I have seen around the places I have lived in Western Europe, in Greece, in Cyprus, what I have seen is that apart from the class dynamics, or in America, race dynamics, if you want to go there, or gender dynamics, there is also the fact that people have a locality and they have a community there. And when there is this community, people cannot just think in terms of class or race or gender. They also think in terms of the locality. And this matters because if you are, let's say, a reformer, a reformist, a politician, and you want to make things happen, you have to consider the particularities of the place as well. So, for example, working class people here in the mountains may have things in common with working class people, I don't know, in Brussels, okay? Yes. But working class people here also have things that are specific to everybody here, not just working class people. And for example, we need water for the mountains. We don't have enough water. We need to plant more trees. We need public transport to make it easy to access the closest city, and so on and so forth. And we all need this, regardless of if we are working class or middle class or whatever. Of course, maybe the super rich don't need it, but I think you get what I'm saying. Like, we have to be able to think also of the specifics of each case and not have just this bigger picture understanding of the class, the race, whatever, okay? Those are helpful, yes, but if you just stay there, you miss out on the important, the critical details, the specifics of the case. And when you do politics, you need to know the specifics of the case and not talk, not pontificate about some abstract person, some abstract society, some abstract working class or proletariat or precariat or whatnot. Okay? So there is that. But of course, the salient point is fine of what you're saying. Yogi is saying here, as Greek slash Cypriot, do you follow Turkish politics? As someone living close to Turkey, how do you wish diplomacy between Greece or Cyprus to evolve? I guess you mean towards Turkey. Do you think the opposition will win? I don't follow Turkish politics closely, and part of this is that if I were to follow them, it would be through the local media. So, of course, that would give me most probably, right, a biased insight into the Turkish political life. And I think while this would give me some information, it could as well be disinformation. And so I'm not sure I would want to have that. Generally speaking, though, my view towards Turkey, or Turkey as they want to be known nowadays in English, which I think is correct. In Greek, we call them Turkia, by the way, which I think is closer in spirit to that. What I want is friendship. What I want is the Cyprus dispute to be finally settled on the basis that agreed upon at the United Nations, bizonal, bicommunal federation. I believe in that. I believe generally in friendship between peoples. I want the Aegean Sea to be a sea of commerce between the two countries, a sea of exchange of people, of ideas, so that we can live together as friends the way Greece and Italy are friends. Like, you go from the western side of Greece, you step on a boat and you are in Italy, and it's always friendly. You don't feel like you are going to a hostile country. Of course, I know that not the people, it's not the people who are necessarily hostile, but the governments are. That's the problem. Like, we have we have the potential of casus belli, we have the potential of war. That's not nice. What I want is always friendship, friendship and peace between people. And I think in practice, we have a lot as Greeks or as Cypriots. We have a lot in common with people in Turkey. When I was in Western Europe, I would frequently go to Turkish restaurants, and I felt at home. I would go there and I would just feel like there is no difference. Like, this is great. And I was like, not just the food. I'm not talking just about the food. I'm also talking about the atmosphere. The people living there were Turks. Some, of course, were naturalized citizens, but there were also Turkey Turks, okay? And I had a good time, always. And I have also met with Turkish Cypriots, specifically here in Cyprus. I have met with them before on several occasions, and I always had a good experience. And I saw how close we are. I saw how similar we are. Like, of course, if you try to find the differences, you can always find differences. You can always divide people. If it's not on the basis of language, it's on the basis of religion. If it's not on the basis of religion, it's on the basis of skin complexion. If it's not on that, it's on the basis of their gender. If it's not that, it's their height. If it's not that, it's the color of their hair or whatnot. If it's not that, it's their accent. If it's not that, it's the text editor they use or whatever. If you really want, you can always find reasons to fight people. Whereas what I want is to find the reasons to be friends with people, and there are many, many, many good reasons to do that. So there is that. As for whether the opposition will win, I have no idea. Um, Erdogan has been there since, as far as I can remember. So yeah, we will see. Hi, Prot. If I understand your stance on God, you are an atheist. If that's the case, how do you ground your morality? Not how can you be moral as an atheist, you can, but how do you ground it? So, me, I am not an atheist. Me, I am agnostic. And on the balance, if I had to say, I would say that I am a deist. I am a theist rather than an atheist. But of course, the reason I am agnostic is this. What do we mean by God? If by God we mean a certain conception of God, such as the Christian conception of God, like there is this Father in the sky who created the world and who eventually came here as a human, who was also a God, and there is the Trinity, blah, blah, blah. Is that what we mean by God? Because if this is what we mean by God, I say no, I don't agree with that. And of course, I can talk about it at length, but it doesn't matter. So, what do we mean by God? Is it an agent of action in this regard? Is it an agent of action? Is it a person? Or is it impersonal? Is it, let's say, the being, the thingness in all the things? Because if it is the thingness of the things, then that's a different discussion. Of course, there are things, therefore, there is thingness. Yes. And of course, I have talked before about what I believe is happening, which is that the universe as such is alive. We have a living universe. Everywhere, everywhere, literally everywhere, you will find immanent logos. This is the Greek word for reason, cause, ratio, structure, word or language. You will find all of these meanings in the world. It's a continuum of life. You will discern patterns, and you will see that all things have reason as reasonableness, reason as cause, reason, logos, sorry, as reason, as reasonableness, as cause, as language, language in the most basic sense of presence or absence, zero or one, binary language. In the most basic sense, you see that everywhere. So do we mean that by God? If we mean that, then of course there is God. But this is a really different understanding of God than the Christian God, the God to whom I expect to make prayers towards, and the way most people do, hope for something in return. With that, I don't agree. I don't agree in a transactional kind of relationship with God. I don't believe in that. I don't believe that God is fundamentally your business partner. I don't believe that it helps to reduce the divine to basically a broker, to basically a money man. I don't believe in that. I don't believe, also, not just the Christians, of course, right? I don't believe in anybody who does sacrifices or whatever in the name of God, hoping for something in return. If you are doing sacrifices and you are in the spirit of self sacrifice, that's good in the here and now. God doesn't need anything from you. If there is God, God is complete. The sacrifices you make are for you and for the people around you. It's for this world. It's not for God as such. God is okay. But to your question, how do you ground your morality? It's this logos that I just mentioned, and then everything will follow from that. Everything will follow from that, of course, in reasonableness, in practical reasonableness, because, of course, it's a continuum of reasonableness. And there is also something else, which is cultural and aesthetic, which, if you were to force me to say, okay, which is the religion that you identify with the most? Again, I am not religious, but if you were to force me, I would say that I am a Greek polytheist, not just atheist, but actually I believe in the multitude of God. And gods is interchangeable because it's the divine that is multifaceted. Also in Christianity, it's one which is also three. And why three and not six? And why six and not 12? And why 12 and not infinite? Okay? So, what I like about polytheism from an aesthetic standpoint is that it is more relatable to our everyday experiences. I was talking earlier about diversity in practical things such as note taking, such as using your text editor and stuff like that. To me, it's easier to talk about diversity if I also have a theological framework or a mythological narrative that acknowledges this diversity as the many of the one, which is the divine, which are equal yet different. And so now I can more easily relate to everyday experiences that are diverse, but it's not about which is better and which is worse. They are equal, they are different. And to me, it makes more sense from a pedagogical point of view to think in terms of polytheism, to think in terms of the many, of the multitude, and of the multitude which has commonality because of the continuum. Everything has commonality. So there is that. But more practically, I don't believe that religion in general, or theology, if you want, I don't believe that it's fruitful to fight each other over theological propositions. For the simple reason, and this is why I am agnostic, because we cannot be sure. We cannot be 100% sure of everything we are saying. We are not sure about anything that we say. Why should we be sure about these theological points? And so, to also connect it to what I was saying earlier about Greece and Turkey and being friends with people, what I want is to find the common ground with everybody. I don't care if you are Christian or Muslim or Jewish or Hindu or whatever, Buddhist, whatever, or atheist or Scientology. Like, I don't care. What I care about is, can we find some common ground? Can we be friends? This is what I care about. As to whether the God has a specific agency and what that agency is, and is it the Lord or not the Lord? Why does it matter so much? If we can agree on the here and now, on the practical issues, which we can do that. people of diverse backgrounds can be friends. We know this. And as I said earlier, it's very easy if you want. It's very easy to find differences. If you look close enough, everybody is different. So if you really want to drive a wedge and to separate people, you can do it. And if it's not with God, it will be with something else. And I ask why? Why do we need to do that? When we can find the common ground and can be friends. So there is that. Let's see. Yorku Tiberiu says, "Hey, from Japan, Prot. Oh, nice. Hello there. It must be night there if I am right. Have you tried other Lisp dialects as well, such as Common Lisp?" Yes and no. I have sort of written a little bit of Common Lisp, a little bit of Clojure, but really, yeah, nothing serious, I would say. Of course, in Emacs Lisp, we have the CL library, which is basically Common Lisp implemented with Emacs Lisp. So I have used some of those, yes, but I wouldn't call myself a Common Lisp programmer in any sense, okay? Uh, Very fun though. I would like to learn more, but it has also to be something that is practical. Otherwise, it's not easy for me to commit to this task. But maybe someday when I have more time. Continuing, how often do you use EWW for browsing? Any way of accessing your website from within Emacs with basic syntax highlighting? So I use it frequently. Basic syntax highlighting, I don't know, because I believe EWW does not parse the pre-formatted blocks of HTML. So the blocks I publish, they have the pre, and then they have a class, which is Emacs Lisp or whatever. But I believe this depends on CSS. So even if Emacs can parse the pre-formatted blocks, it wouldn't be able to read the CSS. So I don't know what it would do in that regard. Maybe, of course, the colors could be embedded directly in the HTML, but that probably is not a good idea because nowadays websites should conform with the system-wide preference of light or dark. My website actually has that already. So yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what we can do about that. So Creep XE asks, what are your thoughts on international Jewry? I haven't thought much about it, so maybe you can be more specific, and then I can answer. If it's something more specific, I'm happy to say. But the way this is framed, it's as if we all know what we are talking about. So if you are answering that, I'm happy to say. What is happening here, folks? What is this? Okay, I don't know. So let's see. Absolutum obsoletum. Nice. Thank you so much for your work and the joy you convey. Greetings from Spain. So, greetings from the mountains of Cyprus. David Mann says, thank you for your excellent packages and tutorials. You are welcome. Marbelock says, how does one break free from the attention economy? Ooh, this is big. This is really big because on the one hand, it's easy. On the other hand, it's extremely difficult. It's extremely difficult because it's ubiquitous. It's everywhere. Like there is a phone, right? So you have your phone. There is the computer. There is a laptop. There are TVs. There is everything all around you. Smart gadgets, all the gimmicks, right? There are all these things, and they all beep, and they all have bright colors, and they all call for your attention constantly. Furthermore, people are trained to act like machines. They are trained to satisfy the algorithms. And basically, you see this where content creators will try to do something that is clickbait and will have like an exaggerated what's it called, thumbnail, and they will have a title which is misleading, and basically you have to click on that, and they will employ all the tricks in the book to grab your attention. And so the question is, okay, so how do I get away from that? And the answer, I think, is simple. You have to create physical distance between yourself and these devices. And how do you do that? Like, simple. So I have my phone here, okay? Me, I have already done this, so I am good. But if you are at the beginning, how do you do this? You have a phone, okay? And this phone is the source of your distractions, or one of the sources of your distractions. Leave the damn thing at home, switch it off, okay? And go for a 30-minute walk or a 1 hour walk, or hop on a train and go to the nearby city, to the next city. Go do some shopping and come back. Do whatever it takes to get a way to create physical distance between yourself and the thing. And try to do that consistently. And eventually you will train yourself to seek it less. It will have less power over you because you survived. And this is the problem. It's what we have, which is like, am I even capable of living without the thing? Is it even possible for me to do this? And it's mostly to prove to yourself that, yes, I have what it takes to live for an hour or 2 hours or a whole day without this. And if you absolutely need a phone with you, go buy one of those older phones, you know, the dumb phones, whatever they are called these days, and buy one of those, like for 20 euro, whatever they are sold here. Buy one of those if you really need a phone to call somebody while you are away from your smartphone. Do that. And that will help you. And it will put you in the flow, in the habit of, in the mindset of creating distance. Creating distance from this thing specifically that is now harmful to you, but generally from anything that is harmful. Because the same can be said about the attention economy of food. It's not just the devices, right? It's food that has intense flavors that is really addictive, and you're like, oh, I need more of this thing. It's the same thing for everything. It's the same thing for everything that we do nowadays, which is turbocharged. It is brought up to the maximum and then some more to basically turn us into cash cows. And I think you and me and everybody else, we are not cash cows. We are not just consumers. And by trying to create this physical distance, by trying to create boundaries, by trying to bring order to this disorderly life, we assume control. Little by little, of course. And by assuming this control, little by little, building up that capacity, strengthening that muscle, as it were, we are now empowered to make choices and to say, you know what, I will go online when I feel like it. Or I will have this nice meal when it's the right time to have the nice meal. It is not controlling me. This is basically the idea. And also, look at it also in a way of egoism. Like, who are you? Who are you? This gadget here, or whatever it is that governs you right now. Who are you to rule me? Who are you to have power over me? And take it as a matter of pride. Take it as a matter of pride to prove to yourself that you can actually overcome this, because you definitely can. It's not easy, I know, but it's possible. And to say a more general thing about retraining ourselves, because it's very easy to say something, right? It's really hard to implement it, though, and to be consistent. And it's when we encounter that difficulty, we sometimes think that, oh, it's not actually hard, it's impossible. And I think it's not impossible. It is possible. You have to think of it the same way we think of muscle memory. So, for example, here I have this split keyboard that I got last year. You may recall from videos I did. And when I first got into this split keyboard, my muscle memory was working against me. I couldn't do anything. I was extremely clumsy. It was really difficult. I absolutely hated it. But I knew conceptually that, well, I have to do this. It's the right step forward for my health, for my wellness long term. It basically puts me in control. Okay? And so I persisted. It was difficult. I hated it, but I kept going, and eventually it worked. I retrained my memory, my muscle memory. And I think the same is more or less true for anything we do. Think of all your habits as muscle memory. Of course, now I am using an analogy, right? But think of it that way, as something that has consolidated and has taken a life of its own, and it won't let go. And you have to dismantle it, to break it down little by little through a lot of work persistently. And as it dissolves, now you have the power to try something new. So good luck if you do try. Divya Ranjan says, hello, Prot. I just wanted to ask, how do you usually manage time between your hot tasks, package management, and thinking about new projects? Are you strictly disciplined and repeat itself? The answer is that yes, I am disciplined, though discipline is also something that requires maintenance. Discipline, however, it doesn't require a lot of work. Or let me phrase it a little bit differently. When you have discipline, which is to the point of what I was making earlier, when you have built up that capacity to resist, create boundaries, to say no, and to say, I am in control. When you have built up that capacity, eventually it is easier to say no. So, of course, they still require maintenance. You still have to keep doing it, but it's easier to keep doing it. Like once you have the momentum, it's easier to keep going. This is kind of the idea. So, me, I am disciplined, but of course, this is something that I gained through a lot of work. It's not something that was just bestowed upon me, okay? And the thing is, what I am doing is I basically have an open ended agenda. So, when I have something that is time sensitive, it goes on my agenda. So, for example, I have a meeting and I'm like, okay, I am meeting this person at, let's say, 7 p.m. So at 7 p.m., I have to be here. This is the idea. Other than that, if something is not time sensitive, I will see what I can do. So I will wake up in the morning, check my agenda, and will be like, okay, my next meeting is at 7 p.m. Therefore, my morning, my day is free. Let's see what I can do. I will check if I have something that can be done with Emacs, or if I am not feeling like coding, I will be like, okay, let me now pick up one of the many tasks I have to do around here, or a combination, which is usually what happens. Let me do some Emacs now that I am fresh. Let me write some code because this requires the brain to do a lot of work. So let me do some coding. And once I have expended a little bit of that energy, let me go to do some manual work, which doesn't require as much brain power. Of course, there is always brain activity, but not as much. And so this is how I generally go about it. There are, of course, cases where there will be kind of an emergency, like there was the flood in a few months ago, and there I had to drop everything and tend to that, of course. So when it's something like this, I will always prioritize that, which is, in a way, again, connecting to what I was saying earlier. It is time sensitive. Of course, it was unforeseen in this regard, but it's still time sensitive. So yeah, this is basically it. And Marbelok says, greetings from Belgium. So, greetings from the mountains of Cyprus. Of course, I lived in your country for a few years and I really liked it. I visited many places. My base was in Brussels. I went to Ostend. I went to Tongeren. I went to Antwerp. I went to Mons. I went to Namur. Liège, no, Liège. Did I go to Liège? Leuven for sure. Liège, which Maybe I am confusing. No, Louvain, not Liège. Leuven, not Liège. I haven't been to Liège. So I've been to Leuven. I've been to Genk. So yeah, I've been to a few places. So there is that. Very nice country. And yeah, maybe I will visit again sometime. So Patrick says, good afternoon from, I guess it's Vasteras or Vasteras, I'm not sure, Sweden. So good luck to you, good afternoon to you too, Patrick. Bastien says, good afternoon from France. So good afternoon to you too. Would like to create a custom device for Emacs. I currently have a laptop, but think it is too large. Do you think a small keyboard and an e-ink screen would do? I haven't ever used an e-ink screen, so I cannot really comment on that. Maybe, but I don't know. Like, how quick is the refresh rate? Like, I imagine it will work with Emacs because Emacs isn't like a video game, 60 frames per second and all that. But I really don't know. I really have no idea how that would work. A small keyboard, yes, for sure. A small keyboard would be nice. It's not, of course, a prerequisite to using Emacs. Like, you can use Emacs with any keyboard, but why not? Why not? Having a bespoke device is fine if you want to make experiments, though Emacs is generally lightweight relative to modern apps. So, yeah, you will have to check that. But a small keyboard is a good idea, I think, especially if you have it with QMK or some other firmware that is programmable and then you can change it. I think that's really nice because you have the layers and it makes it easier to access the keys you need, the symbols, and all those things we use for coding in particular. Let's see. Yorku says, a long time ago in high school, my philosophy teacher told us that dogs don't have feelings but only material attachment since we are the sort of their food and balance. What do you think about this? Well, I think your philosophy teacher is wrong. I don't know if your philosophy teacher ever actually lived with dogs or, more importantly, paid attention to dogs. But dogs definitely have feelings, for sure. They have feelings of all sorts. They have feelings of attachment, they have feelings of friendship, they have feelings of anger. Anger is a feeling. What is anger? They definitely have feelings. They have feelings of happiness, like when you get home and they jump around. They have feelings of withdrawal and of sadness when you abandon them. So I don't think this is right. I would say, actually, I would even go a step further. Dogs not only have feelings, they have feelings and rationality. They have reasonableness. And I have seen this. Like, if you study dogs, if you observe dogs, you will actually understand humans better because you will understand the animal side of us, because we think that we are this rational agent that just thinks about stuff and does stuff, and basically those lowly animals only operate on the basis of instinct. No, humans do pretty much the same. Let me give you an example. I was training my dog Atlas to wait for me to call him. So I was asking him to sit down, and he would sit down. And then I would take a few steps back, and I would call him to me, and he would run to my position. And what we were doing is that I would keep increasing the distance and then call him again. And eventually, I would turn my back and move away from him, and then turn around and call him. And he would do the exercise properly. At some point, though, and here is the nice thing, at some point, I created more distance because I wanted to test his limits. Basically, would he understand the exercise? So I created more distance, and I am about now to turn around and call him. And as I turn around, Atlas is slowly following in my footsteps. And as soon as he notices that I turn around, he sits. So basically, he is cheating. He tried to close the gap so that he wouldn't have to run the whole distance, right? So he closed the gap, and of course, I was laughing. And then I called him, and he came to my position. And of course, this is just one of many, many, many examples. My point is that dogs also understand the meaning of a rule, and actually, when they violate the rule, they know when they are also violating the rule. And I can give many examples of cases like this. So no, I don't think. I think this is simplistic, to say the least. So let's see. Also, as someone who reads philosophy regularly, I plan to read the original Greeks. Do you have any advice, recommendations for learning ancient Greek, mostly Kini? Any book, or resource? So I don't actually know of any book or resource to learn ancient Greek. Me, I don't know ancient Greek either. Of course, as a Greek speaker, as a Greek myself, I would be able to recognize many words, and maybe I have some understanding of more words because I have read them here or there, but generally I'm not an ancient Greek speaker. So I don't know of a resource, let alone a resource that would be for English speakers. Even for Greek speakers, it would be difficult. It would require some work. Uh, but yeah, you can start with Platon, Aristoteles. Well, there are many that you can read, and generally, I think it's a process of exploration and of learning as you go. And it's also, in that regard, serendipity. It is a journey that is serendipitous. You will discover things that maybe you have not thought of, or you had thought of, but now you understand in a different light. So I think that is always good. Felipe says, I've been watching a lot of your videos recently and reading your website, learning a lot. Thank you for the knowledge sharing with the community. Greetings from Brazil. So you are welcomed, and I'm happy to do that. Roman says, any good book about the Diogenes you had read, or any book about this kind of philosophy? And lastly, are you reading any book nowadays? So about the Diogenes, of course, there is what the Diogenes Laertios wrote about in the what's the book of the Diogenes Laertios. Anyway, it's the famous book. But I haven't read specifically a book about Diogenes. And anyway, if there was such a book, it would be a contemporary resource. Oh, what happened? Whoa, 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 1 second. Where are we, folks? Where are we? Oh my goodness. Where is this? Uh, oh, look, it went. Oh my goodness. Where are we? Here. I think somewhere here. Here. Okay. So I think it would be a contemporary, like a modern resource. And I would be interested to find such a book. So for sure, I am interested, but I don't know. I don't know of anything else. So basically, what we have of Diogenes are anecdotes that were written much later in his life. But from what we know, and by piecing it together with also the ideas that would find currency in the Greek milieu, I think Diogenes makes sense in many ways. Because, of course, that's another general point, which is nowadays we tend to have the tendency of thinking of intellectuals without their historical context. And we think of intellectuals in a vacuum of intellectuality. And I think it helps if we can also understand a little bit of the culture. Of course, the more, the better. But even a little bit of the culture helps. Like, it really helps if you understand the polytheism of ancient Greece and specifically the values they had about everyday stuff. Like, it really helps if you understand, for example, the Delphic maxims of know yourself, nothing in excess, and certainty stands beside ruin. These are three maxims. I have talked about them before. I'm happy to elaborate again, but not to go on a tangent now. The point is that there are many things about everyday life and about the values they had and about the outlook they had. I also talked a little bit about polytheism earlier, which help you frame their philosophy as well. Because when Diogenes, for example, says that I am a citizen of the cosmos, so I am του κόσμου πολίτης, cosmopolite. When Diogenes says that, of course there is a backdrop to that, of the cosmos as a continuum of life, as God divine that is immanent. There is God everywhere, and that's why there are many gods, okay? And the cosmos is the living cosmos. And so, why should I be a member of Sinope and not a member of the cosmos? Why should my allegiance be to this small aspect of the cosmos and not to the cosmos as such? Furthermore, to connect to what was asked earlier about grounding morality, where do you ground it? Furthermore, if there is a cosmos and if this cosmos has logos throughout, immanent, why should my allegiance, my morality, my beliefs, my values be limited to Sinope or to Athens or Corinth or whatever, and not to the cosmos as a whole? Because what applies to this part of the cosmos applies to that part of the cosmos. So why should I be a citizen now, in quotes, of Sinope, of Athens, of Corinth, and not of the cosmos? Why should my allegiance be to the particulars and not to the universals? And so I think this kind of cultural backdrop helps. Let's continue. Yogi says, journaling appeals to me, but I've never managed to do it. Do you journal? What do you journal about? I am a master's student and master's of science student and thought about journaling my studies. What do you think? I think it's fine. But again, I mentioned earlier, one size does not fit all. There is diversity, all that stuff. So if I tell you, yes, journal, it's the best thing ever, of course I am doing you a disservice. Try it and see if it works for you. It may work, it may not work. Me, what I do is I do journal, but journal is kind of the wrong word because journal usually means that you write every day and you write with the intent of what did I do today kind of thing. At least this is how I understand it. And for me, this doesn't work. Like, I don't care. I don't care what I did today. Like, oh, I did a live stream today. So what? What does this matter 5 years from now? Like, it's irrelevant whether I did it today or yesterday or the week before or whatnot. It's irrelevant. These kind of minutia, I don't care about. What I do when I journal is to write something that may be relevant but to also reflect on it in a way that is more general. Like, oh, there is this bad weather, right? And this means that I cannot stay on the computer for too long. But what do I learn from this? As a person, what do I learn from this in terms of moderating my computer usage, in terms of understanding the bigger picture, in terms of seeing that there is more to life than me spending time on the computer, for example? And this helps me now explore my inner world, helps me elucidate my thoughts, helps me give them life, as it were, give them a body. And then, once I have done that, again, to reflect further on them. And I think this is nice. Like, you can tell when a person has done the work, basically. In the same way, you can see, let's say, a piece of architecture, and you know, like, oh, this is difficult. Like, I can see all the work that goes into every little bit of it, right? I can see, like, for you to do this wall, you must have spent a lot of time, even if I don't understand all the specifics of what goes into it. And the same is for people. When you see somebody, you can tell how much work they put into their thoughts, into their manners, and so on. And you can tell that it's not easy because if it were easy, everybody would do it, one. And two, because if you have tried yourself, you know how difficult it is to break that resistance. Earlier, I talked about the muscle memory, right? It's the same thing. Like, it's really hard. And so, try it. Try it and see for yourself. But don't put yourself in a specific mold, in a specific role where, oh, now I am the Masters of Science student, therefore I have to write about such and such, what Masters students write about. No. Forget about these imaginary roles. You are not role playing. You are trying to discover what works for you. You are trying to understand yourself. You understand yourself by understanding your world, by understanding the world. And this means that you proceed through trials and errors. And hopefully you learn as you go. And you learn about the world and you learn about yourself. So yes, good luck. From water to wine. Do you ever use have you ever used the SHA-Fly keys? I've been using it for 2 weeks and my RSI feels better now. Did you ever have any kind of RSI using Emacs? So yes, of course, I did have RSI and hence the split keyboard. I still haven't recovered completely actually, but I'm almost there, so it worked. Um, I've never used the SHA-Fly keys though, but if it works for you, that's good. The point is to have something that is comfortable. And if it's comfortable, then what exactly doesn't really matter, okay? So there is that. Let's see. AK says, have you seen what Microsoft did to TypeScript? I have not, but if I were to hazard a guess, they don't use it anymore and people are running around desperate to find an alternative or something like that. Yeah, you will let me know, hopefully. Um, so A Freedom mentions some books for Lisp, Land of Lisp, Structure and Interpretation of Computer Programs, and SICM, I don't know what that is. So folks, when you are writing acronyms, it's also helpful if you explain what they are. But yeah, if you do SCIM, Lisp, whatever, I guess you will find it. So Draco says, Prodesilos, first of all, thank you very much for enlightening me with Emacs so much. You're welcome. I'd like to know your opinion on this. What do you think of caring only about yourself and living off the system? Um, Generally, it's a good thing to care about yourself. It's a good thing even if you are altruistic. And the simple reason for that is because if you are not in a good condition, how are you supposed to help others? Like imagine you are a lifeguard at the ocean, by the coast, and there are people drowning there. For you to actually help those people, you have to be a good swimmer. What does this mean? That you put in the training, you are physically fit, you are strong, you are capable, you did all the work, and now you can help those people. And I think it's basically the same for anything. Like if you want to help others, or even if you want to be a good example for others, it's okay to take care of yourself. What I think is not okay is to think that only yourself matters and others basically don't exist, or they are just non-playable characters in your role-playing game. I think that dehumanizes them, that doesn't acknowledge in them the agency they have, that doesn't recognize in them the potentials they have for feelings, for thoughts. And basically, it also puts you in a world where you are isolating yourself. You don't have a community. And now, Drakon is a masculine name, so I don't know if you identify as male, but Drakon in Greek is a masculine name. So I will just make a comment here about men, okay? Which is like we fantasize, some of us, about this idea of the lone wolf. Like, oh, I am such a lone wolf because I am such a badass. You see, I'm strong, I'm capable, I'm disciplined, blah, 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 okay? And I am a lone wolf. I can do everything myself. And well, that is fine. Like you are strong, you are capable. Lone wolves don't have a good success rate in terms of surviving. We are community-driven animals. We are pack animals, like the dogs that I was talking about earlier, like the wolf. And by isolating yourself, by being extractive and by being exploitative in this way, by being egoist in the most bad way possible, you basically rule yourself from these community experiences. And you are now belittling yourself intellectually because you don't have honest interactions with others, which would provide impetus, food for thought, which would provide impetus for more thoughts. You are not doing that, so basically it's a degrowth kind of situation for your mental world, and also it's a degrowth kind of situation for your emotional world as well. You are not expressing yourself in a way that is reciprocal, in a way that is real. And maybe you have a lot of money and so you buy love and you buy friendship at all, not, but you know that it is fake. You know it deep down, you know it, it pains you. You cannot possibly not know that. And so what I say is, yes, take care of yourself. Yes, if the system is exploitative and you can fight back to resist it, do it, yes, for sure. But don't conflate the system with average people, with people around you. Don't become, in your effort to become anti establishment, become anti human, become misanthropic. So don't make that mistake. And it's important. If you ground yourself in this communitarian outlook, then I think you will be okay. So then, yes, totally take care of yourself. Spam Champ says, Prot, do you plan to learn or feel the need to use a general high level language for general tasks like Python or Perl or Ruby? I kind of do this already with Emacs Lisp. So maybe these would provide something more, but yeah, I cannot think of something that I would need specifically. But in principle, yes, why not? Why not? Also, Prot, what do you think we, the global left, can do against rising right-wing populism? I think the answer to that is to distance ourselves from the centrist orthodoxy, the liberal orthodoxy, which is basically that you appear to the public as this suited up gentleman or lady, whatever, and you pontificate about how the world is. I think this doesn't work. This kind of strategy doesn't work. What we should be doing is we should be doing the grassroots work, which of course, to be fair, leftists do that, but I think we should do more of that. We should do the grassroots work always in our communities, wherever we are, talk about things, try to help people, lead by example. Don't preach one thing and do other things. Okay. And more specifically, don't turn it into some kind of intellectualist competition. Like, oh, I have studied such and such, therefore I am the enlightened leftist that will guide you, the people who are not enlightened. No, every single person has something to teach you. Every single person. You have to approach people with humility, no matter how knowledgeable you are, no matter how successful you are. Everybody can teach you something if you are honest, if you have parisia, to connect to a concept I mentioned earlier. And also, to connect to what I was saying earlier, don't assume that people are acting in bad faith. Of course, some are, yes, but don't assume that everybody is. Somebody who voted for the far right, to be concrete, can be your ally at some point. We see in France, for example, like Le Pen gains a lot of her base from ex communist constituencies, from what I have read. Maybe it's wrong what I read, but if that is true, why is that the case? What happened? What happened in the process where the former communists are now far right? What happened there? I'm interested to know. And I think that fundamentally it's not because they realize that they agree with the far right agenda completely. I rather think that the left somehow lost its way, and maybe we became too globalist. Of course, global left, right? But we became too globalist in the European Union, for example, where we, instead of holding the line against the top-down methods of the European Union, the elitist methods of the European Union, we would go along on the premise, oh, but this is federalism or whatever. Like there are such voices, such as Spinelli, of course, in Europe. But my point is, work, lead by example, do the grassroots work, and assume that people can change. People are not evil, most of them at least. Okay, and we hope for the best. It's both personal and impersonal, as God cannot be less than what we know. The God of the ignorant is not God. Yes, fair enough. It's both personal and impersonal, suggests, though, that there is the constitution of the case. It suggests that if there is one case where it is personal, it's in a given constitution of that case, it's in a given relationship, and so for impersonal. So yes, of course, it can be both personal and impersonal, but now you have to talk about the context. So if you are talking about the context, are you talking about God as such? Or are you talking about God in the world? Like, what exactly is it? And this is exactly the question. And that's what I am now saying, because this is not a simple issue now. It's simple if you assume God to be external to the cosmos, like cosmos and God. That's simple. But if that's not the case, which I assume is what you are saying here, then okay, that's different. Because that's exactly what I'm saying. It can be both personal and impersonal because there can be a differently constituted case. The God of the ignorant is not God. Fair enough, though. Who are not the ignorant? Like, show me one human being who is not ignorant in some capacity. There is no such thing. If we find a human being who is omniscient, it's not human, it's God. So I'm not sure what that would mean in practice. The God of the ignorant is not God, because then I wouldn't know who the knowledgeable are. So Spiros says, by the way, folks, for how long has this been going? I have no idea. It's 5 p.m. So 3 hours formally, but because of what happened and I started later, it's 2 hours and 15 minutes. So yeah, let's continue a little bit more. Spiros says, hi again. Sent a message at around 2 and then had to leave. Just watch your response. I'll try again with the patch. I think people will actually find it useful. Love the F themes, by the way. Thank you, Spiro. So good luck with that. Nicola M. Dev. Hi, aka Prot from Colombia. So hello to you from the mountains of Cyprus. Steven says, hello, Prot. My dad keeps telling me to learn Emacs and watches your videos a lot. What is Emacs useful for? In the most basic sense, Emacs is a text editor. So it's useful for writing stuff. Anything you can write in plain text, Emacs can write it. This is basically the idea. It wouldn't be good for structured text that is like the word processors you find here and there, but for plain text, it will be good. However, there are lots of text editors, and Emacs is one of them. And the difference between Emacs and those other text editors is that Emacs is programmable. So you can make it do what you want, so write text, in a way that makes sense to you. For example, you want to be able to write text and, let's say a simple example, instead of having one long line as you write, for it to be broken into many smaller lines. Or instead of many smaller lines, to be one line which visually appears as many lines. And this is like something really basic, which is implemented in Emacs. But think of now workflows where you can have in plain text your agenda, your email, your coding, your journaling, and all of them exist in the same environment of Emacs Lisp, and you can draw linkages between them. Like me, I have my email, so you send me an email, and let's say we have to do something based on this email. I create a task which will go and show up on my agenda, for example. And this task has a link back to my email, the actual email that I got from you. And so when I am writing something, I have that task and I am writing, I can go back and see the context. And all this happens seamlessly inside of Emacs exactly because of this interconnectedness that Emacs Lisp and this programmability of Emacs gives us. And then what you can do with it, well, the sky is the limit, basically. For as long as it's plain text, basically, or text-centric, let's say. So somebody says here, my nigga prot, so hello to you. Can you describe how is your process to write notes to explore a concept? And you apply Zettelkasten or some like, and how? So me, I don't follow Zettelkasten, no. Me, I write notes, I talked about this earlier, as a way that crystallizes something I have already learned. Generally, this is what I do. So while I am learning something, I try not to write notes. I might write reminders, or I might create bookmarks, but not notes. So the note will be once I have learned it, and then I will write it for my future self, basically. And I will write it in a way that is addressing basically a stranger, so that my future self, who lacks the context, can understand what I was talking about, what I was writing about. The process of writing notes is thus learn the concept of whatever it is you are studying, and then try to express it in your own words. And of course, while you are expressing it, see if that is actually accurate. So did you actually understand the concept? That is the idea. And of course, if you did understand the concept, that's great. This is a good note. And this is basically the idea. And then I would focus more on the substance and less on the methodology, because for me, all the methods fundamentally, they are okay provided they work for you, and they are terrible if they don't work for you. So which method to pick doesn't really matter. Raul says, hi Prot, do you believe we are in a simulation? The answer is I don't know. And the question is, why would it really matter? Let's say we are in a simulation, but we don't know we are in a simulation. So basically, it's the world exactly as we know it. If we are in a simulation and we know we are in a simulation, then we should be figuring out what we need to do to maybe get out of it, or if we think this is better, to continue living in it. But yeah, I would be interested to learn specifically what you want to know about this. Love your videos, by the way. You're welcome. Thank you. Let's see, bro. Sorry, this is addressed towards something else. Bro, you just really have to drop the N bomb. So yeah, that's a good point. You are not brave for saying that behind your keyboard. So yes, this is fair enough, and I agree. And of course, by reading it out, I didn't mean to insult anybody. So yeah, thank you for the understanding. Christos says, please keep topics related, guys. So let's see. A, freedom. So demarcation and conflict is part of life. I think it is essential to recognize that things can get bad, and we should look within that and outside of it at the same time. Of course, demarcation and conflict do happen, though they are amplified when we have a scarcity mindset for things that are not necessarily scarce. And in other words, to put it differently, we can make it much worse. We can amplify it. We can transmogrify it from a basic tendency that maybe all forms of life have to now utter destruction. See, for example, two world wars as an example of that. So of course we can take it to the extreme. And basically what I'm trying to say is that let's try to avoid that by having an attitude that is more friendly, that is more open-minded, that is more conciliatory, and try to find the people out there, not the enemies. Of course, there will be cases where there will be conflict, where it is inevitable, for sure. But I think those are not, or rather, those do not have to be the norm. So there is that. Let's see. Where's the super chat function? What is a super chat function? I have no idea, folks. So Jagannath says, is there an impersonal God description in Greek philosophy? Of course, it's called the cosmos. So the cosmos is, in a sense, God. In another sense, the cosmos. It's not God, to go back to what you were saying. It's a matter of how you want to think of it. And also, it's a matter of the divine in general decoupled from the instantiations of it. So the divine in general, like if you think of personal, let's put it different. If you think of personal, the divine as something personal, you are thinking of, let's say, Jesus Christ, or let's say the goddess Athena, or something like that. You are thinking about a person, okay? But if you are thinking of divine as such, now it's not a person. But your point earlier, it can be personal and non-personal, of course, depending on the constitution of the case. Okay, let's talk about the context. Let's see what we have. Gabriel says, Prot, do you know about MBTI personalities? If yes, which do you consider you to be? I'm afraid I don't know, so I cannot help you with this. MBTI, it doesn't ring a bell. Is this the Myers-Briggs thingy with many personalities? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. So I cannot help. What do you think of cat V harmful section? I also don't know this reference, folks. So maybe this is some computer language, folks, and I prove to be living under a rock. So I'm happy to answer, but if I don't know, it's difficult. In the Bronx, I need a handgun and a phone with me always to even think of going on walks. Otherwise, the fucking ZTs will jump me. I see, of course. So that is tricky, but at least have a phone that is a basic phone and have a handgun that gets the job done. So it's difficult. Yeah, of course. Now that you frame it this way, because this is about the point of how can I get away from the distractions, right? I believe it's connected to this. I'm not saying it's easy. Also, in your case, it's difficult in your environment, but maybe there is still something you can do. Maybe you still, like, I cannot imagine you cannot go outside at all, right? So if you can't go outside, then there is still hope. Let's see. Cat V is a meme. Okay, so I'm not familiar with it, folks. Sorry. So there are a few things here that I don't understand, folks. So I will skip those. Let's see. Okay, timeout. So I don't know how to time out anybody. So everybody can comment whatever. They are just here to troll. Okay, no worries. I don't mind the trolls actually, because me personally, I have a really thick skin, so I don't care and let them do their thing. But it's also a matter of maybe they are not trolls. Maybe they appear to be, but maybe they are not. And I would like to give them the benefit of the doubt. Of course, if they are really trolling and I notice it, I will just ignore them. So no problem, no stress. I didn't mean to provoke about God, so I apologize if that seemed that way. No, I didn't take it personally, so no problem at all. I am an agnostic myself, though atheist agnostic. I am only probing for the sake of understanding your philosophy better. And this is fine. This is fine. And fundamentally, it doesn't really matter. Like, let's say you are an atheist. Fundamentally, what I care about is what kind of person you are. So if you are an atheist, but you are like, you know what, I want to help my neighbor, to me that's fine. But if you are an atheist and in the name of atheism you are like, you know what, I am an atheist, therefore nothing matters, and I will go and abuse my neighbor, then I will be your enemy. I will be like, no, you cannot do that. Why would you want to abuse your neighbor? Sorry, did I say enemy? Your neighbor. Why would you want to do that? So of course it all comes down to the person. It all comes down to practical stuff. And it's what I was mentioning earlier. Like, fundamentally, the theological propositions don't really matter. They matter to help us frame our thinking, but it ultimately comes down to practice. It ultimately comes down to acting. And so hopefully we are acting in a way that is nice. A friend of mine asked this question, and I didn't know how to answer it. Continues, Stanoje, I guess. So I asked you to hear your opinion. So that's very good. He specifically asked, if there is no ground to our morality, then how do we decide it if, for example, two twin sisters should be allowed to marry each other? If we find a disagreement, how do we decide what should be implemented? Okay, let's get this example of two twins marrying each other. Forget about your morality. Of course, I would say at a moral level, this is not a good idea. But let's forget about morality. Think about the case of incest. You don't need to have an opinion about it because nature has an opinion about it. Nature will make sure that this will create disease which will harm what comes after. Nature will weed it out. The reason we have morality on top of this is to avoid that, because we learned that through practice. Nature showed us that. And so we have morality to basically formalize or talk about, turn into a narrative, into a mythos, what nature has already shown us, what practice, what experience has already taught us. So it's not a question of how do I ground my morality in a vacuum of experience. Why would we want to do that, given that as people, as humans, we do not operate in a vacuum of experience? We have experience. So we can ground our understanding in what has worked and what hasn't worked at the very least. So there is that. And of course, I am against incest for that matter. But it doesn't matter what I think ultimately. It's what nature will do, okay? Who should disallow it? God? If the twin sisters marrying each other causes no harm, why should it be disallowed? And yeah, that's the other point, of course. Like, that's a discussion that is open-ended, and I don't have necessarily a strong opinion either way, though it would be harmful to society as well. Specifically in the case of twin sisters, that wouldn't work. But if it were heterosexual and they could produce offspring, then that product of incest would have hereditary disease, which then, if that were the norm, would have other effects on society. Maybe it could burden the public health services or whatever. So then you would have other political considerations. Okay, so there is that to consider. But of course, it's not clear cut. It's never clear cut. If you think things deeply, it's never clear cut like that. So let's see. Hi there, Prot. Hope you are Astro Boy says this. Hi there, Prot. Hope you are doing well from Algeria. So hello there from another part of the Mediterranean. Maybe you are close to the Mediterranean. Actually, I don't know. Always a pleasure to hear from you. So thank you very much. So Minas Mazar says Prot's secret is not discipline; it is cocaine. So there is that as well. No, I've never done cocaine. So just kidding. Greetings from Italy. So best regards from the mountains of Cyprus. By the way, folks, I noticed that it is getting a bit dark. So let's give it 5 more minutes and I will close it there. So hopefully, let's see. Well, actually, there are many more. I don't think I can get to these in 5 minutes. So folks, I will just read a few more here. I would love to read them all, but it's getting dark and I'm concerned that because I'm on the desktop, it will eventually drain all my electricity. So let me answer a couple more questions and I will close it there. And then maybe when the days grow longer even, I will do another one of those videos. So we will see. Ben says, greetings from Amsterdam, the Netherlands, Prot. So greetings to you too. Do you use org agenda to schedule your time-sensitive things? The answer is yes. If so, how do you make sure to have your calendar with you when you don't have your PC? The answer is I don't. I just work from the desktop. And of course, I recognize that this doesn't work in many, many, many cases, right? You need to have your mobile device so you can do that. I don't know. If I had that requirement, I would probably figure something out. But because I don't have it, I don't have a good idea of how to go about it. I guess at the very least, you could have a file synchronization setup, and then you would have an app on your phone that allows you to display org agenda, maybe. And that would work, but I'm not sure. Or otherwise, you would have to export to a calendar file and then import that into your calendar. Otherwise, it would be laborious, yeah. But yeah, I don't have that workflow, so it's hard to know. Thanks for the advice. You are welcome. Speaking of distraction, I tried to use org agenda, but found that made me more dependent on the computer and harder to break out. How do you do it when working on the HUD? Do you check your computer frequently after finishing a task? The answer is no, because my agenda tends to be simple. Like on a busy day, I will have like 3 meetings. Okay. So I know that, okay, I have a meeting at 11, at 3, and at 7, let's say. Okay. So therefore, I can manage my time in between. And usually when it's like that, I will make sure to do smaller tasks so that it's easier for me. If I see that I have a meeting at 7 p.m., basically I won't be on the computer. I will do some work in the morning, as I said earlier, on emails or Emacs or whatever, and then I will go out and do other work outside, and then I will be mindful to be here by 7 p.m. generally. Of course, in practice, I will be here earlier, but this is the idea. So no, I don't think I check it too much. But it's also dependent on you not writing too many tasks for yourself. Like the tasks that are time sensitive should go on your agenda, but if it's not time sensitive, don't just put it there. Don't have your wish list as a crowd out your actually time sensitive tasks. Don't have your wish list as a component of your agenda. Keep that separate so that when you have time, you can go through the wish list and be like, what do I feel like doing today? Okay, and I will do that. But don't have it there and then you have for your morning 10 things to do, which are all wish list items, and then somewhere there is also an actual meeting. Don't do that because then it doesn't work. Thank you for your answers. I agree with your opinion on dogs. I love my dogs, and I am sure they love me too. Very well, very well. So Puet says, and maybe we can end with this, and let's see. Hi, Prot. Hi, guys. How do you act when dealing with a project not complicated, but with multiple elements and numerous interruptions? A la prima may not work. I use a checklist I modify while acting, or orgsly for this. Check if you can break it down to smaller projects. So of course, it can be a project, like for example here, building the hut, right? That's a project. But of course, building a hut, in a sense, it's not a project because it's not, or rather, it's not a task because it's not actionable. Like you don't just build a hut, you do the foundation, you do all the groundwork that you have to do, you clear the land, you establish the support structure, you put the walls, you paint the floor or whatever. Like whatever you have to do, it's always smaller tasks. So maybe there is room there for you to improve things and to basically take this big project and break it down into smaller projects. Because, of course, if they are smaller projects and there are interruptions, they are less likely to interrupt big work. They will interrupt small work. So hopefully that makes it more manageable. At least for me, it does. And then, of course, if you have to check on your phone or whatever, well, that's fine. You don't have to force things to happen. And a la prima, since you mentioned that, which is my method of creativity and how I do things in general, it's not about doing the biggest possible thing in one go. Like, think about writing a book. That's not a task, that's a project. You don't write a book, you write a page, you write a chapter. And the cumulative effect of all those tasks is the book. Okay, so if I set out in my agenda and write the tasks, I'm like, write page one or write 500 words. This is something I can do. But if I say write a book, well, I cannot do that. Of course, there will be many interruptions. But hopefully, if I say to myself, write 500 words, and I block a time, let's say for the morning to do that, well, hopefully there won't be any interruptions and I will do that. So there is that. I guess that's all for today, folks. There was this problem earlier. If you go back and see the recording of the video, you will see I talked about it, where basically the stream started 45 minutes later than I had scheduled. I was here, but what can we do? So thank you very much for your attention, folks. Let me see if there is anybody else here that I didn't mention, at least by name. Uh, so there are many things here that would be interesting, and the Greeks are here as well. Raul, um, uh, oh, come on, I have to comment on. Okay, really last comment. Right? I really wish I really wish I could comment on everything, folks, but it's getting dark. So let me comment on this on food for having a more balanced life, philosophically speaking. So for me, food is foundational. Like, let me put it differently. Philosophy is something you do with your brain, and generally intellectuality is something that is mostly rational. Of course, there is a feeling component to it as well, but mostly, if we were to simplify as well, we would say it's brain work. Okay, but you are not just a brain, you are not just a mind, you are brain and the rest of the body, you are mind that is embodied. So the health of your body will condition the kind of thinking you will be doing. If your food habits or your life habits in general, because it's not just food, it's what you eat, what you drink, what you breathe, what you think, it's all that, and what you do as well, right? So if all those are harming you, and if you are in a state of not feeling well, eventually that will also contain what you can do intellectually. Because if you are not feeling well, well, it's hard for you to think, like you have more pressing issues. So for me, food is one of the pillars of actually doing philosophy, or of actually being an intellectual, or of being creative more generally. It's not just food, though. Of course, food is one of the pillars. Like, take care to treat yourself to good food. Like, avoid junk food, avoid pre-processed food. Not because there is some moral reason or whatever, even though we could even frame it in those ways. Not because there is some political reason or whatever, even though we could frame it in those ways as well. But do it because it's better for you. To have a healthy diet is better for you. It's better for you because you are feeling better. It's better for you because you are more creative. You have more energy. You have more vitality. You can keep going. Minas Mazar said earlier, the cocaine. You see, I keep going. It's that. You want to be able to keep going, and you want to have that kind of tenacity in your creative endeavors as well, not just physically. But it is rooted in your physique. It is rooted in your fitness. It cannot be decoupled from that. Like, why would it be decoupled? You are not a brain. So there is that, folks. I once heard, okay, comment again from Laurel, and I close with that. I once heard, do not eat anything your grandfathers would not recognize. I think that's really good advice in general. Of course, I guess there are good exceptions because of the progress of science, blah, blah, blah. But I think this is a good rule of thumb. I think this is really helpful. And I use this actually in different words, though. When it comes to bread, like, if you go and read the ingredients that go into the industrial loaf, it has like 100 ingredients with names that you cannot even pronounce. And I'm like, I don't remember my grandmother having that on her shelf. I don't remember the whatever dextrose of the monosynthetic whatever thingy being on the shelf. Okay, so there is that. Of course, that's all for today, folks. Thank you very much for your attention. And maybe next time I will have even more hours to talk, and we will see how it goes. Maybe I could keep going, but if I run out of electricity, it's a pity because I don't know what the impact will be on the stream. So let's call it a day then, and some other day we will see how it goes. So take care, folks. Thank you very much, and goodbye for now. I will do a live stream when the days grow longer, maybe in a couple of months. We will see. So, bye bye. Bye bye.